Here we are well into September, and by now many kids have settled back into school. But would it surprise you to know that this fall, your youngster may take a field trip to a funeral home, visit a mortuary where cadavers are laid out for embalming? It can happen. Welcome to the startling, the shocking death education.
Loosely defined, death education is supposed to prepare young people for coping with death. Most schools make it part of a health class, but some devote an entire course to the subject. And as Tom Jarrell shows us, it seems there can be unexpected consequences. We begin by following a high school class on a death education field trip.
These students from Paint Branch High School near Washington, D.C. have chosen to be part of a rather unorthodox field trip. They have entered the embalming room at the Rapp Funeral Home.
Ladies and gentlemen, today our teacher will be a dead person. Our teacher will tell us something about death. Our death, everybody's death. His name was Stanley. Stanley died relatively young.
Bill Went, a priest at Maryland's St. Francis Center, is paid to conduct this tour for about 400 students a year.
This is Stanley. We're not going to show his face. He's given his skin, he's given bone, he's given bone marrow, he's given eyes. He's helped a lot of people.
This group's teacher, Phil Campbell, hopes that the stark, shocking reality of death will convince them of the importance of life. Some of the students are repulsed by the experience.
This skin is real important.
Although 1 out of every 10 of our public schools include death education, its emotional impact on students is still unknown. Funeral director Richard Rapp takes a matter-of-fact approach.
When death is sudden and they want to find out exactly why the death occurred, you're given an autopsy. So he's got some incisions here that are not part of what he gave to help somebody else.
Impressionable young minds are curious about the subject of death and how they are taught as a topic of controversy. Educators argue that today's teens are increasingly preoccupied with death. It has invaded their young lives in the form of auto accidents, crime, and teen suicide.
You see here where they've taken his eyes, but they've put the plastic caps on him showing you.
No problem.
Death education is introduced as early as kindergarten, and by the time they're 18, these 5th graders will have witnessed 32,000 murders on television. So to give them a more realistic view of death, this class in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, is going to their local funeral parlor to visit the casket showroom.
They will see that person in this casket, and it's very important for them to say goodbye to that person. This is really accepting that what they have to do is select a casket that can be...
Funeral director Michelle Hecker's tour, against a backdrop of coffins, quickly becomes a probing of the children's deepest emotional concerns.
When my great-uncle died, something really bad happened to him, and they had to have the casket closed, and they had to have a picture of him on top of it because, you know, you wouldn't want to see them all messed up and things like that.
When he was laying in the casket, I saw a fly, you know, it was flying around there, and that sort of bothered me. But then I pictured him sort of swatting at it, you know, but I thought he'd wake up, you know, and that sort of hurt me to see him not wake up.
If I want to die, I like this one.
Then the children are encouraged to feel the plush, soft, final resting place inside the coffins.
I think it's probably helpful for them to understand what caskets are before they actually have to deal with a death. Then when they have to deal with it, they have an understanding about it.
Death education has found its way into many classrooms in a variety of ways. James Mueller wrote his own curriculum on the subject 13 years ago and had it approved by his superiors and by parents.
And can anyone tell me what an undertaker is?
He or she is in charge of the funeral.
Okay, he or she is in charge of the funeral.
For 4 days every year, the subject of death enters his classroom as the topic of instruction. Mueller defines words on the subject, and the students are told to design their own tombstones.
Well, I use it as kind of a therapy, and I found that children who have a very good outlook, a very positive outlook on life, will put many, many years on that tombstone. They won't put down they died in 2 years or 4 years. They usually put down they're going to live to like 80, 90, 100 years old. And that's a very positive sign. Okay, we're going to be writing obituaries now, boys and girls. What exactly is in an obituary? I think it benefits them because they can have a better appreciation of life. There is a beginning and there is an end. I start the course by saying, as soon as you're born, you start to die. And when they realize the fact that there is a beginning and an end, there is something that is put in between, and that is the enjoyment of life.
I was sort of scared to die at first until we learned about this. And then I got a lot better from it. And now I'm not scared to die.
I didn't like this program because I don't think that I really want to die at this age. And they were making us write stories about us dying at this age. And I really want to grow up and have a life.
Probing young minds about the subject of death is highly debatable among educators. Unlike Mueller's approach, there is no approved curriculum in most death ed instruction.
That's what a cremation looks like when it's done. That was a full body about my size.
Next stop on the high school students' guided tour is the cremation room. Funeral director Richard Rapp exposes the teenagers to still warm human remains.
This is what cremation looks like. And it's not like a cigarette butt. You can take them home, you can put them on the shelf, you can put them in a cemetery. We have a lot of people do both cemetery and something private. If you had a favorite swimming hole or a fishing spot, what a nice place to put this. So the options are yours.
They don't see the real stark nature of death until they've been able to do precisely what we've done today with them. To touch it, to feel it, to smell it, to know that it's real.
The proponents of death education in the public schools believe they can help prepare kids to deal with the emotional distress and grief of death with some special training. But the problem many experts say is that these courses can stir up emotions in some youngsters that ordinary classroom teachers are not adequately trained to recognize or cope with.
Just relax. You can put your head down. You could, do one of these numbers, but just relax.
The death ed teacher here at Paint Branch High, Phil Campbell, is not a psychologist, but he's using a therapeutic technique. The students are encouraged to enter a trance state and reflect on the loss of a close relative or friend. Avis lost her father last year. Scott's brother Eric died from cancer 2 years ago.
Relax. Now, what I'd like you to do is to go back in time to a place where you've experienced a significant loss, a death of a friend, a suicide. The loss, the death you have revisited today cannot be changed. There's no way of it. You're free to go on with your life, even though mourning is okay to go on. Now, in your own time, as you are ready, you may open your eyes and return to this room.
My sister was laying on the love seat. Something was wrong. Something told me it was my father that died. And my mother had told me. And then I just went into her arms and I was crying. As the students relive intensely emotional experiences, Avis loses control. Her grief over her father's death has resurfaced. Other students have similar reactions. Psychologists say inducing a trance state is potentially dangerous and may cause unnecessary trauma when conducted by an untrained person. Campbell, a sociology teacher, attended a one-day workshop on adolescent grief and admits he's not personally trained to deal with a possible emotional crisis like Avis is experiencing.
I'm not a therapist, so I don't see it as therapy. What I do is I get the kids to talk, and I listen carefully to what they're saying, and if I sense that they're at risk or at need, then I know where I have to go and who I need to talk to get these kids some help.
Campbell then takes the class to the cemetery where Scott's brother is buried. Scott's grief becomes a teaching tool for the class.
This pain will always be inside of me. I don't think I'll be able to get rid of it. I mean, people don't know me like that. They just look at me as a football player and all, but I mean, really, inside, I mean, I'm going through a lot of pain inside from my brother's death. That's what most people don't know about me.
Campbell's approach, called therapy education, first emerged in the late 60s. Psychologist William Coulson was one of the early innovators of psychotherapeutic techniques. but he now opposes the methods he once advocated.
Aren't kids seeing more of death younger these days on television and with crack and violence in the streets? Isn't there a need to educate them younger about death?
It sounds like one of those things, Tom, that would be a good idea, except empirically it's just not working out that way. See, these interventions aren't powerful enough. They're not therapeutic enough, if you will, to keep the troubled kids out of trouble, but they are powerful enough to draw the untroubled kids into becoming troubled.
I didn't see any reason to keep going. If I didn't have any friends, I didn't have anything to live for, I basically just stopped caring.
Tara Becca believes she was seduced into a suicide attempt by her death ed class. 6 years ago, Tara was a junior at Columbine High in Littleton, Colorado. Her English literature teacher began weaving her own beliefs on reincarnation into the classroom discussions of death.
This is what this teacher was teaching. When you die, you get all the knowledge that God has, and then you're recreated. You come back again in another life form, and you have all the knowledge that God knows. And for a person like me that definitely loved to learn, that was exciting. You know, wow, I get to learn everything God knows.
Was death taught to you here as being something terrible, something to dread?
Oh, no. No, it was exciting. It was something to look forward to. It was definitely very appealing. It was an escape.
Tara finally decided she wanted to escape and saw death as the only solution to her typical teenage problems. She recreated her actions of that night for us, just as she had carefully planned her own suicide.
We talked about what we wanted to look like in our casket. That night I went and I had my hair fixed up and I had my nails done.
Then she searched the nearby Rockies for a suitable cliff to drive over. She sat in her car for hours contemplating the life or death decision.
I wanted freedom from my body, and this was the only way I could get free from myself. I would no longer be in bondage, and this is what the teacher and everybody in the class was talking about. So I decided that I was going to make everything look like an accident.
After carefully planning her own suicide, Tara drove home for one last visit.
I came home late that night after thinking it all over, and my dad met me at the front door, and they could see that I was definitely not with it. I was saying things like, it's not really me. And my mom and dad knew that there was something desperately wrong, so they took me to the hospital and put me in a psychological area of counseling so that I could get some help.
Tara's English teacher is no longer at Columbine High. The school has refused to comment on the case, other than to say the course had nothing to do with Tara's problems.
You were, as a teenager, confused, you were depressed, you felt lonely. I mean, without this class, might you not have been a candidate for suicide?
I had thought about it as a possible option for a lot of years, but I never would have gone through with it. Never, because I wasn't brave enough. The things that we learned in the class taught us how to be brave enough to face death.
What makes us think that American education is going to do a good job teaching death education? We ought to be trembling about the fact that the schools, which have failed to teach academics, are now presuming to teach matters of life and death.
If you'd like to feel the difference between life and death, you can touch Stan. Stanley's very cold because there's no blood. You have lots of blood in you. You feel warm and full of life.
Graphically introducing death to impressionable young minds is at the core of the controversy over death education in our public schools. Will students walk away from here with a clearer understanding of death, or with nightmarish memories that might haunt them for life and perhaps inadvertently suggest death as an answer to adolescent problems?
Wonderful. It's good to see you alive. And more we could not wish you, and more than Stanley would not wish you, than have an awful lot of life. Live it well.
Yes, some elements of this teaching just do seem overly morbid, touching cadavers and everything.
We should point out that the use of actual bodies in these classes is reasonably limited, but we had no trouble finding this course.
Do parents know that this is being taught in each case?
That's a major problem, Hugh, that schools teaching these courses without letting the parents at home know, and the answer is for the parents either individually or collectively as a group, if they're concerned about this, to go to their school, to find out if death ed is being taught, and then find out what's in the curriculum, because that's important. Also, is it an option for the kids, or are they being pushed into this by peer pressure? Parents know whether the kids are emotionally ready for it.
You know, in sex education, a lot of experts feel that questions should be honestly answered, but to load a lot of information that's unasked on little kids is probably...
On a young mind, it is
Might not be a good
a heavy burden to get into that type of subject, including death.
Right. Thank you, Tom.
Certainly.